Climate action, like climate change, is multifaceted and requires innovation in all areas of our society. The quality of our commercial and residential buildings is essential for reducing carbon emissions and will have major implications for our health, our wallets, and our future. The Erie 2030 district is taking action with commercial building owners to reduce their energy and water usage by 50% by the year 2030, hence the name. To help us learn how the Erie 2030 district is uniting commercial businesses for energy efficiency, how our buildings can protect us from the worst effects of climate change, and what we can do about it. We're going to learn from Ellen Conrad, Green Building Alliance 2030 District Outreach Specialist. Hello and welcome to the Jefferson Educational Society's digital programming. I'm Ben Spegan, and I'm the Vice President at the JES, and I'm a contributing editor at the Erie Reader. Now, before we dive into her presentation, a bit about the presenter. Ellen Conrad is the 2030 District Outreach Specialist at Green Building Alliance, GBA, in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. She facilitates the Erie 2030 District, strategizing and developing relationships with Erie Property Partners to encourage building energy efficiency in the region. Now, the 2030 district connects commercial properties to individualized analysis, technical assistance, and financing opportunities to reduce energy and water usage by 50% by the year 2030. The Erie 2030 district is now 15 property partners strong and is growing. At the GBA, Ellen is also a part of the Green and Healthy Schools team, working with K through 12 educators, administrators, facility directors, and high school youth on building efficiency, sustainability projects, and climate change education. Ellen specializes in working with high school youth, most recently co-planning the virtual Woodland Hills Youth Climate Action Summit in October 2020 with a local nonprofit, Communitopia, and 6 Woodland Hills high school youth. The summit attracted nearly 200 attendees and raised over $1,500 for climate-related projects at that school district. Now, outside of GBA, Ellen is an active member of the Citizens Climate Lobby and serves on the board of Communitopia. Now, folks, since this program is first airing live on the JES Facebook page, we're going to work our way through as many questions from you, the viewers, as we can as we host this event. If you have a question, just leave it in the comments section below, and we're going to do our best to get to those after Ellen's presentation. Of course, if you're watching or listening to a later broadcast of this event, streaming it on demand, still send us your questions, your comments to keep this conversation going, to stay engaged here. And of course, for more information about upcoming JES programs and publications, please visit our website, jeserie.org, and be sure to like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter and Instagram, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Ms. Ellen Conrad, thank you so much for joining us for this conversation and this presentation.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. It's so good to be here. Let me just get my slides up. Ben, does it look good?
Fantastic, Ellen. It's over to you. Take us away. Take us through that presentation. And folks, friendly reminder, your questions, your comments in the comment section. We're going to get to those after Ellen gets through this presentation. Ellen, over to you.
Okay, sounds great. Hi, everybody, and thank you so much for coming. I'm here to talk about the Erie 2030 district, which talking about commercial buildings, residential buildings, and also just general resilience in our infrastructure. So as Ben read my bio, my name is Ellen Conrad. I am the 2030 District Outreach Specialist at Green Building Alliance. So Green Building Alliance is a nonprofit located in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, although we work throughout the southwestern PA region, including Erie, south and northwestern PA region, including Erie. And we advocate for healthy and high-performing buildings. Our vision is that every building in every community is sustainable so every person can thrive. And how we achieve this goal is through multiple different ways. So first and foremost, we do lots of education and training with adults, any type of like building professionals, so engineers, architects, people in construction, you name it. We've worked with them, but we do lots of training on different green building certifications such as LEED, Passive House, G-Pro, which is like an operations and maintenance type of certification. We do building tours, we do educational workshops and events and speakers. So that's a huge part of what we do, is strengthening the knowledge of our building community. We also do lots of work in our community and with policies. We work in schools, with community groups, but we also work very closely with the city of Pittsburgh and also with the city of Erie government, and trying to make policies that make our buildings greener. And then, of course, we do lots of work with energy efficiency, which is the 2030 program, which I'll get into more on how we do that exactly. And pictured is the Blasco Memorial Library, which is one of our 2030 district partners. Yay. So you can feel free to weigh in on this question in the comments if you'd like. But what comes to mind when you're thinking of an action that has a long-term positive effect on the environment? There's plenty of things that come to mind for me. When I'm thinking about the environment, things that come to mind are like, well, isn't it really important to have like green energy? Isn't it really important to drive less? You know, the answers range wide and far, but I'm going to go ahead and just take a little guess that green building isn't the first thing that comes to mind. It may be like number 3, I don't know, but it is a huge way in which we can reduce our carbon footprint. And it's somewhere where we spend a lot of time. Actually, the average person spends about 90% of their time indoors, which, I mean, if we're going to be honest, over the past year, it's probably gone up closer to 100, maybe speaking personally, but I think my personal experience is pretty universal. And here again is another property partner of ours, the Erie Art Museum. So yeah, talking about the climate impact of buildings, it's probably not surprising that cities account for about 60% of greenhouse gases worldwide. Makes sense, right? There's more building, more people, more cars, so then there's more energy being used to make our cities run how they're supposed to. And then, of course, like with all of these mores, there's also more pollution. So there's an impact on human health in cities and areas that are highly populated. Buildings play a huge role in these greenhouse emissions. In the US, buildings contribute about 40% of national greenhouse gas emissions. If you're interested in that figure, it's from the EPA, and about 12% of the greenhouse emissions come from like heating and cooling in buildings. And then about 27% comes from our electricity use. So this has been getting better. Actually, this percentage has dropped in the last 10 to 15 years because of the work that we've been doing with energy efficiency. But also as buildings get older, they become less efficient. So it's becoming even more important for us to continue these efforts to reduce our footprint from buildings. And that brings me to the Erie 2030 district. So this is an initiative of Green Building Alliance to reduce energy and water consumption in existing commercial buildings. So you may have heard of different types of building standards like LEED or living building or passive house. Sometimes they have plaques on the wall. We've made so many strides in building technology to make buildings that are greener and greener use less and less energy. And those are great, really important. But actually the greenest buildings are the ones that are already standing. Think about the carbon emissions that go into building a building. Improving what we have, making them better for the long haul is worth the time, it's worth the carbon, and it's worth the cost. And so we'll work with new buildings, of course, like we're all over new projects, but our specialty really is in existing buildings. Our work is working with existing property managers, facility managers, property owners on how to make their existing buildings cheaper to run, greener to run, and better for the health of all the people that are in them. And of course, we do this in Erie. So this is a 2030 district framework. So this comes from Architecture 2030, and it's a framework that goes for a 50% reduction in energy, water, and actually transportation emissions by the year 2030. And that's for existing buildings, like we said, our specialty. But for new buildings and renovations, It's the same goals, except for with energy, we're going for more aggressive carbon targets, which is a carbon neutral building. That technology is not an emerging technology. It's already here. We can build buildings that are carbon neutral. But it's more about finding the resources to do it, the expert knowledge, and we connect people to that knowledge. We have that knowledge in order to make these projects happen. So even though these goals seem really maybe idealistic, depending on what you, how much you know about buildings, they're not. The technology is here. It's just about getting people connected with the right funding sources and the right education, which is what we're here for. So the 23 district network is 23 network districts strong. So they're all over the US. Actually, the Pittsburgh district is the largest district of all of them. And Green Building Alliance also runs the Pittsburgh 2030 district. But of course, today we're in Erie, and I love Erie, so we're going to focus on our Erie friends. So just as Ben said in the beginning, we now have 16 property partners. And we achieved our established status, recognizing us as a district in October of 2019. We published our first year of progress in August of 2020. So how the progress works, I'll get more into this later. But we go off of a baseline from 2003 of what buildings were like in 2003. And we compare buildings now to those buildings in 2003 to basically say, okay, like, compared to other buildings like your building, you're using more or less energy. Here's how we can solve that. So we actually achieved a 14.8% energy reduction for the 2019 data year. So all of our partners' data put together, we reduced energy by almost 15%. That is a big deal. We should feel so proud of that. And so, yeah, Erie, give yourself a pat on the back. And we are continuing to recruit partners to this district. The geographic barrier you see is the area in which we're recruiting partners, although we do have affiliates that are outside that area. So if you're thinking about a commercial building that you know that might want to join this district, even if it's not within the boundary, we would love to work with you and help you reduce energy in your buildings. So here's a list of our district property partners. The newest are DCNR and also Gannon University that have just recently joined us, but we work with AHN, we have UPMC, we have lots of churches, we have museums. We just work mostly in commercial buildings. We do not work with residential properties. So talking about energy and our utilities in our buildings that produce the greenhouse gases that I was talking about earlier. Most buildings have electricity, natural gas, and water. So the electricity in buildings is used for mostly lighting, but can also be used for heating and cooling or appliances. Natural gas in Pennsylvania is the primary utility for heating and cooling. And then water actually does contribute a lot to greenhouse gases, which people don't think about. You think about electricity and natural gas, it's like, yes, you are burning a fossil fuel, you are contributing to greenhouse gases, right? Well, with water, you may not be burning anything, but it does take lots of energy to treat water, takes lots of energy to pump water. And reducing the amount of water that you use, the amount of water that you heat, can change the amount of greenhouse gases in your building. So that also is very important, which sometimes it doesn't compute in a place like Erie that has such a rich water, the water region. I made that up, but we're gonna go with it. Okay. So how we do this, how do we track this? We use this system called Energy Star Portfolio Manager. Anyone can make an account, including for like residential property. If you're interested in your building and how much energy you're using, I really recommend trying this out. It's free. It is a program out of the US Department of Energy and also the EPA. So those two organizations, those two branches of our government teamed up to create this system for tracking energy. And so what you do is you input your utility information, like what you get on your bill, how much you're using, how much you're paying, and it shows you how much you're using in comparison to other buildings like yours. And so what the 2030 district does is we have our property partners input their data into Energy Star Portfolio Manager, and then we compare it as an aggregate whole. So something we really care about in the 2030 district is confidentiality. We never share anyone's building information. So I'm never going to say, oh, such and such, they use a lot of energy. Never. What we report on is we report on the whole. So we as a team are using this much energy, reducing by this much energy, whatever. And then we meet with our partners individually to talk through their buildings. So the dark blue bar on this graph would be like the site that we're talking about. And we'll say, oh, these are the office buildings that are in the district. Your building is performing below baseline, so that's actually better. You're performing below baseline and better than this many of the other buildings in our district. If you were one of the ones on the end with a red bar above, we'd say, okay, like, what are some things you've considered? What's some things you haven't considered? Let's talk about your options to reduce energy or water use in your buildings. So there's some strategies. Usually our strategies, there's lots of them, but they fall into these three-ish categories. So tightening the building envelope is a big one. So a building envelope is like the skin of a building. So that's the outer layer. So you think about the ways that air gets into a building, like think about where you feel drafts, think about where you, what cold areas of your house maybe. That would be probably a leak in your building envelope. So we address that by sealing it. So that's like caulking your windows. That's like putting insulation in your walls. That's like, oh, if you have a giant gaping hole in your basement, like I did in my first house in Pittsburgh, probably want to patch that up. That would help your energy bills. So that's one strategy we go for. Another strategy is buying and maintaining efficient equipment. So some buildings have equipment that are from 1950. Those are old, and we can do better than that. Technology has come a long way, and it gets to the point where the cost of replacing a system is actually cheaper than trying to just run your existing system. If you're able to track it, like we do in Energy Star Portfolio Manager, we can prove that. And so that means going for sometimes electric appliances, sometimes going for really efficient natural gas appliances. Just kind of depends on the building, the size, the location, what have you. So that is a big deal. And then also there's things like changing your thermostat. So maybe getting a smart thermostat works for you, or having it controlled by management in the building if you have people who are really turning up the heat at certain times of year. Lots of different strategies. These are just the categories. And then the last category is improving building operations and occupant health. So it is better for people to have a better working building in lots of ways. When you have a better working building, typically you're having better air circulation in your buildings. So that's better for helping people focus, for helping people breathe, for preventing COVID spread, like having focus on the quality of air in your building has real life implications for people's health and for the functioning of the building. And then also just sometimes our work is also working with facility managers on how to talk to their occupants, how to tell them about like, oh, maybe like it is actually a solution, an energy solution to bring a blanket into your office and to have ways to keep yourself warm if you're someone who tends to be colder. That gets into something sometimes doesn't always work well. We try and come up with as many solutions as we can to just make a building overall more comfortable for its occupants, with also using less energy overall. Cool. So I actually am curious. I want you to put it in the comments, and then we're going to come back to it before we do Q&A. But like, how have you saved energy in your home? Or if there's like a stray facility manager out there, like, hello, how have you saved energy in your building? I'm really curious about what you've already done. Like, I'm sure not all of this is new information. And I'm always interested in hearing ways that people have saved energy. So yeah, put it in the comments. Okay, so I hope I made like at least a decent case that and managing energy in your buildings, it saves you money. You're no longer heating air that's going to just escape out your window in 15 minutes. You're not just reheating air every time. You save money when you think about your buildings and improving the efficiency of your buildings. You save the planet. You're reducing greenhouse gases. You're reducing the amount of fossil fuels that we have to burn to make our buildings run, to make us comfortable in our homes and in our businesses. And also we're making people happy. If we improve the quality of our buildings, if we kick out that old 1950s furnace and we put in something a little newer, people are going to be warmer, they're going to be happier and healthier. Okay, I just want to touch a little brief bit on resilience. So most people are familiar with the word sustainability. I know it's kind of lost a little bit of meaning over the years because it's used so broadly. So the way I like to define sustainability is the figure on the right side of the screen, which is called the 3 E's of sustainability. So environmental, economic, and equity. So when you're making a decision about sustainability, you're taking all 3 of these things into account when you're making it. Another way to think about it is the 3 P's. So people, planet, prosperity. You can't just think about people and money because then you're losing an environmental component, things like that. Resilience takes this to another level. Basically, it says, how can we be proactive about a future that we know is coming and that we want to see? And so when it comes to buildings, resilience is like a natural part of what we do in our buildings because we're always predicting what the future is going to be like. I mean, if you're managing your building in a really proactive way, you're going to save a ton of money because you're going to be anticipating, oh, hey, like even just like little proactive chances, like, hey, I know that my basement floods every 5 years. Like maybe it's a bad idea to put carpeting down in my basement this year. Like maybe I should go for a different type of flooring that's not going to mold and be removed. That is a proactive building management strategy that actually is centered in resilience. Happening. And as we are preparing ourselves for that, that resilience in our building is going to become a key component. And that's what we're working with our property partners on as well, is thinking that proactive and thinking about their buildings in the future. So this is some examples of proactive resilient measures that people have taken residentially. So this is like a flooding example. So when you're in your kitchen, maybe you would put things on raised surfaces. So that way your appliances don't get ruined by flood water. Maybe you have ways of blocking flood water, like the front door is flood resistant. That's interesting. I never would have thought about that, but that would make a huge difference. You'll notice that the boiler was moved to the upper floor. There's really like no mechanical reason why it has to be in the basement, but like maybe if you were redoing your boiler, you could explore what that would be like to put it on the upper floor. So thinking about your region and thinking about changes that are going to happen with climate, as we can prepare for that in our buildings and actually make it easier for people to bounce back from natural disasters. And that in itself is a resilient decision. Here's another building example. I'm sorry, these are all about flooding. If you wanted to hear about other examples, they exist. But talking about this example in Brooklyn, New York, with Red Hook, the neighborhood of Red Hook is really prone to flooding because of climate change and rising seawater. And so this IKEA comes in and builds their store on the 2nd floor. So knowing they're right there on the edge. If you look on the map, you can see them they're almost like right in this bottom center. They knew they were building in a place that was going to flood. So instead of just like, oh, I don't know, just building any old IKEA, they built it on stilts. So that way, when flooding happens, none of the merchandise gets ruined. Like that's kind of the forward thinking way that we are going. And that's so just with, that's just one example, another example of forward thinking for resilience, responding to climate change in our buildings. So other ways of existing building resilience. Savings from efficiency upgrades being used for retrofits is a big one. We try and encourage our property partners to think about the cost of changes in their buildings as investments for the long term. That's something that's tricky sometimes, is that like it does take some upfront cost to make your buildings more efficient. It might cost more money. That's why green financing is such a big deal. And that's why we actually spend a lot of time looking for green financing opportunities for commercial buildings to do these projects, because that shouldn't be a barrier. Just because you don't have the money, the capital up front, doesn't mean you shouldn't be able to have a greener building. So thinking about the savings as an investment into other future upgrades and being able to think differently about planning for investments. Weatherization is a huge one. Actually, this one applies to what happened in Texas with the freezing of pipes and how they lost electricity and they lost water to lots of residential properties. Like, I can't say that they would have completely prevented it, but they never prepared for like cold weather like that. I wonder what would have happened if their pipes had been weatherized and their houses had been more weatherized. So more insulated, kept warmer just passively, just because they're wrapped in insulation. I wonder if that would have helped some of their systems stay in place and not break. If the city had, if that was a part of their practices, not only would they have been saving money up until now, because they wouldn't be losing heat from their hot water pipes, or their power lines wouldn't have been as affected by maybe like wind or whatever, but cold weather, they would have been more prepared if they had been weatherized. Increasing ventilation, getting airflow moving through the building. That's just better for occupant health. It's better when things flood. It's better in the case of a global pandemic, which no one really planned for until now, but we should be thinking about now. And then, of course, like other smart renovations, making choices like the carpet in the basement example with flooding. Maybe that's not the smartest renovation, but being proactive, thinking about the long term of your building is smart, and that will make a huge impact. So Erie's already doing this. Like, Erie's awesome. I don't know if you've heard, but they're putting a huge solar array on the Erie Central Fire Station, which is just like go Erie, because they're doing this action for resilience. And this is meant to become a hub for people to come to in the event of a disaster. And that is a forward-thinking move. Also, Erie City is a part of the Erie 2030 district. So go Erie City on that solar array. Okay, so that's all I have. I just want to highlight a couple events if you're interested in Green Building Alliance and want to get more involved with the work that we do. We have a couple upcoming events. This is the Mobility Justice, Health and Justice event about transportation. It's happening on April 1st. So I guess that's tomorrow. If you want to come, it's from 3 to 4:30. We have a Women in Green event. We have a supportive network for women in building fields, or Women Plus in building fields. So if you're interested in coming, being part of that network, love that. Our program, the Erie 2030 District program, is sponsored by Erie Insurance, Erie Community Foundation, and the Metropolitan Edison Company, Pennsylvania Electric Company Sustainable Energy Fund. That's a mouthful, sorry. Feel free to follow us on all social media, on Twitter or on Instagram. Thank you so much. I hope this gives you something to think about when it comes to building efficiency, and I appreciate the time.
Yeah, Ellen, thank you for that, and thank you for going through it. Because I think a lot of folks are obviously thinking, here we are in 2021. There's time left on the clock. There's stuff they can do, but yet this is underway. So it's great to take a look at the wins we can celebrate so far and the work that still lies ahead. When we're looking at addressing these critical issues that you've mentioned. One of the comments I'll just echo from the comments section is this person says the 2030 district gives us a roadmap to energy, water, and transportation efficiency. Thank you for showing us the way. So indeed,
yes.
Thank you Thank you for that overview and that presentation. One of the things I remember early on from your slide deck is, and we saw those three images appear later again. We saw water, we saw natural gas, and we saw electricity. So
Mhm.
Ellen, when it comes to building energy efficiency, because you mentioned water is something we don't often think about in that equation, and you talked about some of the energy involved in pumping that through, filtering it, getting access to what many of us do take for granted, clean water right out of the tap. But when it comes to other misconceptions, or things we don't tend to think about, what do you see as the biggest misconceptions that people at large have when it comes to building energy efficiency? What do you run into in conversations with the average person on the streets when you're having this conversation, you, the expert, and somebody looking to learn more? What are the biggest misconceptions?
I would say one of the biggest misconceptions, I think that most people don't understand the impact that buildings have. They kind of see this as being kind of like a side thing, like not the biggest priority. We want to focus on other priorities. And I'm a big believer that like everyone should be doing their part when it comes to climate action. But like building plays a huge role. And so just getting that message across of how important buildings are is something that I come across a lot. But another misconception is that it has to be really expensive. So I mentioned like some of the changes like it require, like one of them was like getting a new boiler or getting rid of your furnace that's from 1950 or what have you. But that's not actually the first step. Usually that's like step number 10. Like assuming that the majority of people here are like mostly just own their own houses, are residential property owners. Um, the steps you can take are really cheap and they're really small. Like just things like putting plastic on your windows in the wintertime, insulating your walls if you know there's a part that's really cold. If you want to go above and beyond, you can get a building audit where they'll come in and tell you, like they'll even rank them for you, the things that you can do to make your building more efficient. Or the big one I go through with my roommates is how warm you should keep your house or how cold you should keep your house, which the Department of Energy says 68 degrees Fahrenheit in the winter is the most energy efficient to set your thermostat.
You read my mind. I was going to ask you what the magic number is. So it's 68. So in the
68, and then I think it's either 75 or 78. I'm having
okay.
trouble remembering.
So we can look that up and get it, but we know there are magic numbers to look at this. And you read the room, right, Ellen? That we have residents tuning into the program, and one person was asking, what they can do, and I think you outlined that some simple things people can do in their own homes or their apartments, wherever it is they reside. But this person's also asking how do they champion the commercial business property owners where they are? How do they help people get involved in this conversation? The businesses they know and love, how do they encourage people to get involved?
Oh my gosh, call me. I think if you have commercial buildings that you know are interested in sustainability and energy and they're in the Erie area, like we welcome everyone to join this. You don't just have to be like the big energy users, like the lots of our property partners who own multiple large buildings or large hospitals.
So,
Um,
so there's not a size restriction when it comes to
no.
acreage and footprint that a building takes up. It could be a building that's, just a small little footprint of a block
Oh,
versus
yeah.
companies that do take up multiple blocks at a time.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And like we'll take all commercial properties, small to large. The reason we focus on commercials because we need to have some sort of way to narrow it down. But but as far as like yeah, any commercial property, doesn't matter how large you are welcome to join. So is this a good time to tell people my contact information?
You can certainly tell people, and we're going to revisit
Okay.
that at the end of the program. But yeah,
Oh
let's get
great.
it now because you said call. That was your first response was call me. So your
Call me.
contact information for folks that want to help.
Okay, yeah. You can email me. That's actually the easiest way. Please don't call me. But but my email is my name is Ellen ELLENC at GBA like Green Building Alliance PGH like the city .org.
Fantastic. And we'll make sure we put that in the comment section here, and we'll come back to that. And we'll get it again at the end before we leave. We got some more questions before we're going to let you go, Ellen. And
I
one of
love
those
that.
is, looking at what the property partners get out of the network, and then also what they give into the network. Because you talked about this nationwide collection of cities, Erie being one of them, stretching all the way to the West Coast, all the way to the Northeast. I saw Portland, Oregon on the map.
Yeah.
So, what do property partners get out of this network connection? And then we've got to assume this is a give and take. How are they also giving into the network in
Mhm.
terms of helping to build these connections, working, I guess, city to city, metro to metro?
Mhm. So, as far as the program itself to sign up, this is a free program. We don't charge anything to join this. So anyone is welcome to join. It's no cost. Um, we figure that you're doing so much, like we want every dollar to be spent on your building because that's our goal. Our goal, we're a nonprofit, so we're able to have these goals of like, we just want people to have better functioning buildings that use less energy. And so when you sign on, you're signing up to share your data with us so we can make educated recommendations. And then also it gives us a really powerful sense about what is happening on the large scale too. And so that information is helpful for informing policy decisions. Like it's not totally due. It's not like a one-to-one correlation, but like some of the information that we have about buildings in the Pittsburgh 23 district have helped support getting a benchmarking ordinance. So like having buildings over a certain square footage report their energy usage to the city, just as a way to like continue encouraging energy efficiency and transparency around buildings. So the give is giving your building information to us, but then it's also just giving your time and attention. So we have education events, we'll have meetings, we'll have individual meetings, group meetings, whatever that might be. And it's just like asking for people to engage with us. And that is what they get out of it. Like other than getting our technical expertise, where we are experts now in energy and we're experts in energy efficiency and green financing. Other than having access to experts, you also get a community. So you don't really think about it, but like facility managers don't have a lot of opportunity to make community with each other. And it can be kind of like a lonely profession where you know about your own building, you have your staff, but you don't have many other people to confer with about like, wait a second, how did you get green financing for that project? Or like, oh, did you go with this model or that model of furnace? Like to have someone that you can actually like, people that have those connections, that knowledge to exchange ideas with is actually very important and very powerful. And so actually, COVID is horrible. I'm not even going to try and say that there's been any bright side of COVID. Having virtual programming has increased our participation in those virtual events. I miss the in-person events where we see each other, but we've actually been able to have more participation from our partners in those education events about energy efficiency. And so that's actually like something that's been really cool to see.
When, like you said, we're all spending, we spent an astronomical amount of time inside of buildings prior to the pandemic, and now even more so. But I think that it's lowering that barrier of access to opportunity to now connect in a different way that perhaps is maybe easier. We don't have to get in a car, which does cause some pollution, and drive to an event. Or maybe we are missing the days we could walk to an event, but still, there's a barrier that's been lowered where we can gather, perhaps more easily in different and new ways. So I've got to imagine some of that will move forward with us in the post-pandemic world when we can still gather digitally, but then also gather in person to have these conversations. Going back to the comment section, this person says, Ellen, you're clearly passionate about what it is you do. How did you get involved in it? This is a personal question they're asking you of
No,
what got you interested in this, what got you excited in this, because they're saying they can clearly sense your passion about this topic, about this work. How'd you get involved?
Oh, I'm also just very easily excitable, so that helps a lot. I get a lot. Well, I honestly, if you had asked me 3 years ago what I'd be doing, I never ever would have told you that I'd be where I am right now. So that's just like goes to show you say yes to certain things and it leads you in a certain direction. But So my interest is in climate action and advocacy and climate education. And so that's the part that gets me really excited. Like the building efficiency stuff is something I've learned. It's knowledge that I've gained from just working with our partners, but it's getting people excited about their buildings and showing them what kinds of things you can do with your buildings, like what's possible. And so I think that like that human connection, showing someone like, oh, wow, like, look at this project that you did reduced your energy usage by this many percent. That's so exciting. Like really is motivating for me. And then also, of course, like the fact that people don't think about buildings as having an impact on greenhouse gas emissions. You are taking climate action by just paying attention to the way your buildings are running. You don't think of facility managers as being climate activists, but they totally are.
But and I think that it broadens our definition when we think about all of this stuff and we think of ways to help move toward a greener world for all of us. And that sometimes it's these smaller steps that all add up, or these collective community small steps that all have a bigger impact that we get to see. And so of course the number we heard again and again and again in this presentation is 2030. So that's the end game. We want to get there by 2030, and we want to reduce energy and water usage by 50%. Those are real metrics. You're looking at real data. And so to meet those goals, where do we need to be? That's 9 years away. Where do we need to be in Erie, Pennsylvania in 2025, say? Where do we need to be moving the needle so that when it comes to 2030, we're celebrating the win, not saying, can we get another 10 years?
Mm-hmm. That is a very good question. So like I said before during the presentation, that Erie is at 14.8% below baseline. And that is something to be really proud of, because we just established our district in October of 2019. We're still pretty new, but even existing networks. So like, I'm actually looking at my notes, but like the Pittsburgh 2030 district is at 23.1% below baseline. And I think like, theoretically, we're supposed to be to 35% by the year 2025. So when you're thinking about that, I know everyone's like thinking about, oh, that's only like 4 years away. How are we going to make it? I think the important thing is just to continue moving the needle. Like if we get to we obviously want to keep doing that. And that's through financing support, that's through education, and that's just through having the supportive network. Is everyone going to make that 50% goal by 2030? I really hope so. But it might not, but that's okay. Like the idea is that we want everyone to be moving in that direction. So even if it's by 2031, at least you're moving in that direction and making those choices. I think actually also another thing that we didn't know about before a year ago is COVID and COVID recovery and what impact that could potentially have on our abilities to have a green recovery. The money that is available, the funding, the infrastructure bills that are coming through our government right now actually have a lot of promise to help this green recovery move forward, to incentivize certain choices that normally wouldn't have been funded or possible, but now could be.
Yeah. Ellen, I think you're reading my mind, because I was wondering what sort of policy we see being put in place that, we can see from other example cities, or, we know that is doable elsewhere, because I can't help but think, yes, like there's going to be funding deployed to regions, like never before now coming out of this recovery, but also just the impact that policy change has. And I know you're focused on existing buildings, but, we'd had a program looking at carbon emission reduction in Germany, and a city council in Bottrop, Germany, made the move to then say, well, any new buildings that need to be built, the new ordinance was they had to have a green roof. So if you were going to build a new building, you had to have a green roof. That's a new policy, and that's policy change. So what sort of policy reform do we see, metros and municipalities passing to get to greener cities? What are there good analogs we can look to throughout the country, internationally, that we can look to? How do we get policy reform to help this?
Well, there's lots of different ways we can go forward with policy. And you'll have to forgive me that I'm not like the policy wonk. Like that's not like my specific expertise, but I can talk generally about policy that works. Policy that works is like benchmarking ordinances. So requiring certain buildings to make certain buildings over a certain amount of square footage to make reductions in energy. And then other ways of requiring that is requiring a certain amount of efficiency in appliances. So you might recognize, people might recognize Energy Star. Like Energy Star is also like a certain, all I can think of is the word sticker, but we're just gonna go with sticker for now. But a sticker that can go in appliances that say like, this is using a certain amount of energy and it's less than the average appliance. So having those kinds of standards in place for appliances and requiring types of efficiency standards is a way that we control like the source of the problem, like making it not like you can't buy like the old inefficient types of technology that we've already outpaced. Not letting people buy the horse-drawn buggy of furnaces anymore, making them buy the spaceships, because the spaceships exist and they're worth it. They're worth the investment. So those kinds of policies are the ones that we want to amplify. But the main thing is that most green, sustainability, future maybe minded people want that. Like they want policy in place to help guide their decisions and also to promote a world that they want to see. I think that like that actually opens lots of doors for people and like helps guide decision making around buildings and policies moving forward.
So, Ellen, I'm going to share this in the comments section. Somebody weighing in because you were wondering, what sort of better preparedness in Texas might have helped with the sudden cold snap that was experienced. And this person said they wanted to weigh in, because you were wondering how they might have fared better in the recent cold snap if they had more resilient building codes. I can only imagine it would have helped many people. This person's sister moved to Houston after she graduated from college, and the parents had retired there many years ago because they were familiar with living in cold climates. The folks who had moved to Houston, they knew to prepare for this and other cold snaps. But even with that knowledge, there was still one small filter outside that they didn't even know that they needed to insulate. Those pipes were the only ones that froze, but even that caused issues. Building policies would make sense in the future to do a better job of requiring putting pipes indoors and or insulated to help them. So I wanted to weigh in and just share that comment because it's somebody with firsthand experience in their family, having gone through that of, looking at the small little changes we can make. And you've talked about those from what residential users can do. We've talked about that for commercial as well. We're almost out of time here, Ellen, and I want to ask just a few more questions. And one being, what are the biggest obstacles? Because, I think you're optimistic. You sound optimistic. You sound passionate about we're going to get there to 2030. And we do have a little bit of wiggle room if we don't all get there. But if we're still marching toward those goals, then, if it's 2031, it'll be okay. But what are the biggest obstacles, that stop commercial properties from getting to these goals that we could find a way to help them through those obstacles, over those obstacles, around those obstacles?
Financing. Like 100%, it's financing. It just because like I said, like most people that are facility managers, they want their buildings to be awesome, and they want to be able to do building tours and be like, yes, like look at this wonderful building that we have here. And those kinds of, but the investment to make buildings that way, it's expensive. It's a lot of upfront costs. It's just like, and like people go to there's lots of different options. There's like power purchasing plans that people can do for like renewable energy. There's a new, actually, this is brand new. There's a piece of legislation called CPACE, which I'm not going to remember what it stands for, but it just got passed in Erie, that is low interest financing for projects for commercial properties. So like that's along the same lines as a loan, low interest loan, which is really exciting. That's the kind of changes that we need to see. But it is getting that capital to people, helping buildings make those retrofits and making them affordable. Because we know what to do now, it's just doing it. That's true with all kinds of climate action, honestly.
I was going to say it's connecting the people and the places to the resources they need and making sure those resources are available to them, and then helping to bridge that. As we're looking forward here and thinking, how this might grow in a place like Erie, Pennsylvania. I started with the intro and I said 15 partners, and in this program it's been updated to 16. You've got 16.
Yeah.
Is there anyone that gets turned away? Is there a criteria where you say we can't work with you, or you're a building that it's not going to work, or is there a cap out? You're only working with 20 and that's it. Once you reach that number, that's as far as you can go. What's that look like?
No, everyone's welcome until the end of time. Even Pittsburgh, like the largest 2030 district in our new partners. Obviously, like if we're thinking about climate, there is some strategy. Like we want to get the biggest energy users on board, because like if we help them reduce their energy, then like that's reducing a lot of energy, but that doesn't mean that like smaller partners can't join or many partners can't join. Like we want people to be a part of this, and we want to go through your data with you, and we want to show you steps that you can take in your buildings, and we want to give you the financing. Like that's what we're here for, and that's what we want to do for as many people as possible. So there's not really it's really unlikely to get turned away unless you're a residential property. Sorry, we're working on we do multifamily though, so
you do that, and you offered plenty of recommendations and tips for residential users, even though Green Building Alliance doesn't work directly with them. But that's what we're hearing: come one, come all when it comes to commercial properties. People can work. Okay, yes. So Ellen, we talked about a ton of stuff. So and I've got time for one last question. We covered a lot here in a little less than an hour. For folks watching this program, listening to this program, plenty to take away. But if they take away just one thing, what do you hope that is?
That this is totally possible. It's definitely doable. Both in the way, what I mean, reducing energy in buildings is possible. It's doable, and we have all the technology we need. I think that that is another misconception, going back to your first question, is that we need more research, more technology to make climate change stop. Like, actually, no, we have all the information that we need, all the technology. It's just a matter of doing it. And that is really possible. There are networks of people that are working to do it. So like the Erie 2030 district, so.
What a great takeaway. Miss Ellen Conrad, Green Building Alliance 2030 District Outreach Specialist. Thank you for sharing your knowledge, your expertise, and taking the time, energy, and effort to share them with us here in conversation. Thank you.
It's been so good being here. Bye, everyone. Thank you.
And of course, everybody watching along at home, whether you're tuned in real time, watching live on the JES Facebook page, or you're streaming this on demand later. Thank you for tuning in. These programs can't happen without you, the audience. And we're grateful for you, your engagement, your interest. Continue to leave comments, questions in the comment section. We'll monitor that. Ellen, a friendly reminder, I know we mentioned it earlier in the program, your email address for folks interested in connecting with, following along the work you're doing. Your email address, and then anywhere they can find out more information about Green Building Alliance and the Erie 2030 district. Where do we point them?
Sure. Okay, so my email address is my first name and first and my last initial. So it's lnc@gba.pgh.org. And if you want to check out our website, learn more about the Erie 2030 district, our website is go-gba.com.
Fantastic. And folks, friendly reminder, stream other JES programs on demand. You can head over to jeserie.org. You're also going to find out information about upcoming programs, as well as a wide range of publications, from quick, timely reads to reports, essays, and more, all available free to download. And of course, be sure to like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter and Instagram, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. For the Jefferson Educational Society, I'm Ben Spagan. Be safe, be sound, and thanks for listening and learning with us.